Hi, my name is Zachary Termeyer, and my part of the presentation is on 7.4.5 Real-Time Conferencing. Real-time conferencing, also known as voice over IP or internet telephony, is a very popular system due to its economic benefits. In short, it's cheap. It allows companies to use networks that are already in place instead of having to set up new lines across the US. So instead of having to go to a place and set up new infrastructure, the infrastructure is already present. Per Anderson was the pioneer behind voice over IP. He and his group of friends turned a similar system for a class project and for a grade, and he received a B. Not to be deterred, Per started the company MBX in 1996 and sold it for $90 million in 1999. Now, how has voice over IP translated into the systems we have today? Voice over IP being connected to computers started when computer systems started being created with microphones, cameras, and speakers to be able to support and process media, much like the video I'm currently recording. Without any of these systems already being pre-installed computers, these wouldn't be possible to have them already be set up. We would need to have alternate external devices to be able to have these functions. A popular example of an early conferencing system was Skype, a system that lets the creations of things we use today, such as Zoom for our online courses, or Discord for communicating with friends. I'm fairly sure everybody's fairly familiar with Zoom, as most of our classes were online over Zoom calls and sitting in conferences waiting for people to just seeing like a face-to-face icon of a person. It's a very good example of real-time conferencing and the benefits of it. As network bandwidth kept improving, video calls began to gain popularity alongside voice calls. So people started to look for more than having a simple cell phone call with somebody. And the question remains, how does real-time conferencing work? For us, anytime our voice calls or video calls begin to break up the buffer, we blame the internet service. Like, oh man, my internet's messing up, that's why I'm lagging, or I'm in a bad spot, that's why I'm lagging. However, the requirements for maintaining two-way conversation is much more difficult than streaming a service or watching a live event. The main difference is the required low latency. Latency has to remain low across the board for the entire duration of the call. The highest latency that was passable by customers before it became just impossible to go along or to continue with the conversation was 150 MSEC. Due to the required low latency connection, the proper system to use is UDP rather than TCP, because TCP's retransmissions create delay that you can't escape from. Therefore, in order to skim off just as much latency as we possibly can from the process, we're much better off using UDP than TCP. Now, the limits of video conferencing are that not all forms of latency can be reduced. The distance between Seattle and Amsterdam is 8,000 kilometers. The propagation delay of the speed of light for that distance is 40 MSEC. Now, in real life, we are never going to reach the theoretical speed of light. Therefore, knowing that it's 40 MSEC sets a baseline for it. That anything we make will likely have above 40 MSEC of latency, and that we should take that into account when deciding other parts of the process. For instance, another part of the process is packets. Video conferencing cannot use large packets due to the latency required for one to process. A 1 KB packet takes 125 MSEC to fill and can be longer if samples are compressed, and will take at least 8 MSEC to transmit the package over a link that runs at 1 megabyte per second. That's obviously a problem because if you remember back to the limit, you only have 150 MSEC before it was unbearable. So having a system where you have already losing up to like 133 MSEC, you're running very close on how far of a distance you can have without overdoing the limit of a video call. So obviously, large packets typically were a no-go, so voice over IP systems use short packets to reduce latency even with the lower bandwidth efficiency. They're pretty much trading the efficiency for the ability to have the low latency, because that is the number one requirement of a real-time conference. Now, to continue with the limits of video conferencing, software overhead can also eat up delay budget and cause unacceptable conferencing. Because we are not streaming, the encoder cannot compress the file, therefore both the encoder and decoder must run quickly. Things like buffers don't really work in a real-time conference, So there's no way for the computer to process a large amount of information ahead of time because it's real time. Also, when a packet takes too long to arrive, the video player will try to hide the loss. They'll repeat frames or hide audio behind ambient sound. That's why you have those repeated frames whenever you're lagging or something of that nature. It's not that that's the frame the computer remembers. That's the computer trying to go, hey, we're trying to catch up. This is what we'll show you for now. Network layers, however, can reduce latency or at least jitter by utilizing quality of service mechanisms. The only time latency is unimportant in real-time conferencing is when you have enough network bandwidth for everyone, which is not a realistic case. So pretty much the best way to do it would have a big enough, to put it in perspective, a big enough cake to where no matter how many slices you took out of the cake, you still had more cake. And it didn't matter how big these slices were. Unfortunately, it's just not realistic due to economic problems and land problems. If you have a system you're trying to set up in the mountains, obviously you're not going to have enough hardware to be able to set up such a large system. And so in scenarios like that, you will encounter problems. Now my question is, what grade did Per Anderson get on his prototype of voice over IP? The answer is B. He received a B when he turned in his prototype of the voice over IP in for a project.